Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of TBR. I'm George Binns. And this evening we're going to start with the annual State of the City routine. And to help us understand it better, we have with us the City Councilor at Large and President of the Board, Julie Flowers. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you so much, George. Thanks for having me back again.
Yeah, and I guess start off with the big issue is the budget. How's it going? And took a quick look at it. It looks like the budget's going to be up about 5.4%, and the school settlement seems to be about an 8.3% change. The rest of the departments look like they're up 4.5%. So is that how it looks to you? Is that the way it really is?
Yeah, you know, we're right at the start of budget season here, as you know, and so the budget's beginning to come together, and over the next coming months, and especially when we get into May and June, that will be really heavy budget season. So folks who are following will really see it come together, and can really follow along in depth at that point. But you're right, as we're beginning to get a sense of where the budget's going to land, there's no question that this budget, and I think constituents, residents, folks have heard the mayor or the city council, we've been having these conversations sort of forward-looking, saying this fiscal year 26 and following, these upcoming budgets will be tighter or more difficult than some of the budgets that we've enjoyed in recent years for a whole host of reasons. But you're right to say that sometimes our budget does go up strictly on contractual obligations, which means paying our employees, paying them fairly for the work that they do. And of course, the municipality delivers a lot of different types of service, and it takes people to do that. So we've got a lot of different people doing a lot of jobs, working really hard. So meeting those obligations, and that also includes people's health care. So anybody who is on the City of Beverly health insurance plan, as our health insurance costs go up just as a plan provider, that's a piece of that contractual obligation as well. So I think your assessment is looking accurate. We'll have a chance to dig into the budget more deeply when it's presented to us, at which point a new tool that the city started using last year, be using it again this year, is this ClearGov online budgeting process that allows for folks to be able to go on once the budget goes live, for lack of a better word, and is presented to the council in May. There'll also be a website where anybody in the city could go on, get a better sense of sort of the narrative of each department, where their budget has either increased or decreased, but also it's very interactive, so people can generate different types of graphs that might help them be able to drill deeper in ways that answer questions they may have, or just present the information in a way that's more understandable. So that will be coming forward officially in May, and then we'll have those budget hearings that folks are used to.
Well, something like that is up and running now, because that's where I got a lot of my info from. You go on the city's website,
you can just see it there.
Click a couple of buttons and you go off into the boondocks, and it always surprised me every so often when you hit one of these city websites, you're now leaving the city's...
Oh, to take you to the other hosted site, yes. I think that's a good reminder, because it's always good to be cautious when you're online, but that is true. If you're going to look at the online budget, or a few other of the online applications the city has, it will give you that kind of a message, and so you can click through. And so your point is well taken. I think if folks are looking at things online now, just to be aware that that's an emerging picture, and they can be more assured of seeing a sort of more finalized, at least finalized for presentation product when it gets officially presented to the council in May.
It's a bit challenging now, because I tried to print out a page and faint, can't hardly read. I don't know what's going on with the print system, but...
Oh, that would make it more challenging.
Yeah.
Well, and I should have said that the city council's budget process, where we really dig in and have those department hearings, that starts end of May and into June. I should have mentioned that for folks who are really interested in following the process, the school's budget process will be ahead of that. And they have, on the school side of the budget, the school committee will hold a public hearing on their portion of the budget prior to all of that. So if folks are interested, it's always the school budget conversation happens ahead of the total budget conversation.
And the one saving grace to the whole thing is it looks like the income revenue source is up a little over 5%. So
there's some balance.
So there's a chance to balance the budget without going any deeper into debt. So I guess one of the things that's still hanging in the fire is a lot of building projects that got talked about over the past couple of years. I guess they started to work on the fire station.
Yes.
And so that one's in process. Don't know of anything, don't see anything happening at the library, so I guess that's still in limbo. And renovations to City Hall, or what are we going to do about the dollar store? Those still are up in the air as far as I know. You know of anything happening with them?
Yes, the mayor and some members of his administration just attended the last city council meeting to give a quarterly update. This is something that this current city council, this is sort of a new iteration of the way that we're receiving reporting from the mayor, where this city council really had asked for more regular reporting with updates on all of these ongoing projects.
Yeah.
So as opposed to sort of hearing about the project when it came to us for presentation or for a request for public hearing. These are these regular updates that this council has requested. And so the mayor came with members of his team and touched on some of these. So I just now can give you some information from what we heard from them. You're correct that Central Fire Station, some of that work has begun, and we'll see more of that work happening when the weather gets a bit better. So that's been a project that has been part of the city's capital plan for some time, much needed, and so I'm very happy to see that work has begun. The firefighters working out of Central Fire Station have definitely been working conditions that needed an upgrade. Been very patient. I'm happy to see this going forward. As far as the City Hall project, you're right that it seemed like it sort of came forward with a bunch of presentations, and then there hasn't been a lot on it. What had happened is that the mayor and his team decided that they would sort of press pause on continuing forward with requesting authorization for the project and go through a schematic design process first, which more closely mirrors how the city went about doing the middle school project when that was redesigned, or the police station. So really to have this full throttle schematic design, which allows for a more accurate, ultimately the hope is for a more accurate project estimate cost-wise when you come forward and ask for what the total project cost will be. So in the most recent update that the council just heard, the mayor reported that schematic design process is basically concluded on the City Hall project. Then that means that the design itself is now going to the intended construction team, construction leaders, architectural team is involved. They'll then be able to sort of look at the design and really get a closer estimate of what would this really cost? What would the estimate be for the needs, the supplies, the person power to get it done? And so his hope, what he expressed, was that they hoped to be back in front of the council with a full presentation and request for a public hearing to authorize money for the project within the next 2 or 3 council meetings. So that would bring us into possibly April. And I think what folks can expect then is to receive, and for the council to receive, this sort of full presentation, but with the request in terms of the budget for the project being able to be more accurate because the full design has been fleshed out. According to the update that we just got, the mayor's saying that they're still sort of within this budget that's been talked about all along for City Hall, which is around $26.2 million. That's inclusive, in their estimate, inclusive of cost to temporarily house City Hall employees somewhere else as well. So that's a piece of the cost that's a little variable because under state procurement law, they can't actually get a bid back for what it would cost to rent space until they have authorization to do the project. So it's a little bit of a guessing game, but I think folks can expect to see that one coming forward soon.
So part of the free-for-all over the teachers' strike and all that was the concern that the city would have to back off on some of these sewer, well, maybe not sewers, but sidewalks and tree planting process. And at the same time, there was still an open issue of what are they going to settle with on the other union contracts. So has that been sorted out yet, or is that still in limbo?
I think many of the pieces have, I think, now become more clear. Many of our city unions, I think, last time I heard all but one, the contracts were settled. And so I do think that allows for clarity then in this budget planning process. Among the other updates that we got as a council from the mayor and his staff were about streets, paving, and sidewalk work, which you rightly just raised. And so I think the plan for the coming year is still for them to address some of this ongoing sidewalk work that had already been slated, as well as in their plan, they have 17 streets lined up to be paved in the coming paving season. Some of that sounds like a big number, although small comparatively when we think about our whole city, but that's an aggressive paving plan. Some of that is because we've got the streets that have been part of this national grid, this ongoing national grid KV 115 cable project that's run from Goat Hill into Ward 4 on Lothrop Street. That project's wrapping up, and so National Grid, part of the agreement is that National Grid is paying the city money to be able to fully repave and repair the streets that have been part of that project. So that accounts for how there's sort of this larger number of streets that are slated to be done, because we've got this one specific pot of money for those streets and their sidewalks. That will be like full curb to curb kind of work. But one of the things that the mayor had proposed doing is to use more free cash in the coming fiscal years to be able to do some of the paving work that we need or sidewalk repair work that's needed, as opposed to putting it in the budget as a line item. So that does mean that it becomes a bit variable. We can't always know how much free cash we'll have, as you and I have talked about that. But I think in the coming year, that's what you'll see happening.
Yeah, just to clarify, free cash is not a donation from some.
It's not.
It's really money that was budgeted and wasn't spent.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, great clarification.
So
if only there was some kind of just donation coming. Free cash from somewhere.
It sounds like, it's raining money.
Yes, no, you're right.
There's a helicopter going by.
It's our budgeted money from a previous fiscal year that was not spent and becomes available.
So that's good that it's working on it. And the other thing I think people need to recognize that National Grid's paying for it, but we're paying for it in the bill on the.
That's absolutely true. Yeah, any ratepayer to National Grid, of course, that's how they're getting their money. So
my back pocket gets hit again. So it's again, there's no free cash but it just takes it off the city's budget. So at least we have some flexibility to do other things that need to get done.
And I think to your point, another sort of pain point that folks have been feeling if they live on the KV 115 line. If you live anywhere from Wellman and Weber Street and Goat Hill all the way down that route that traveled down Broadway and through Ward 2 to Ward 4, I think part of it is also in recognition of the fact that sort of unquantifiable pain has been just the real difficulty of living on that route. And so National Grid ensuring that the city has the funds to repair those streets for those residents. I think that's another kind of recompense that's coming in. But you are correct that National Grid, of course, where they get their money is from their ratepayers.
Yeah. So the other issue that keeps coming up is protecting the city against climate change. Everything's blamed on climate change, but it's reality. We're on the coast, and storms come off the ocean, and they get to be rather aggressive. And there's been an erosion problem in the city, as well as the flooding in Lynch Park and a few other places.
Yes.
So this is an issue. And in fact, there was a project a while back, I remember, that they had to do something about protecting the sewage treatment plant of the pumping station for against flooding.
Yes.
So where does all this stuff stand? Is this still in the budget, or is that a separate entity?
It's a little bit of both. That's a great question. Some of the work that we've been doing to protect against erosion or to repair erosion is really a better term. I think you're right. There's already been erosion at some of our beautiful spots like Old Bear Park. And certainly Lynch Park has been sort of at the forefront of this conversation. Some of that work has been and will continue to be grant funded. And so in that sense, it's sort of outside of our budget because it's this money that's coming in thanks to the work of our city grant director, Catherine Barrett, who really does a great job working with departments, looking around to find out what grants are available, and in some cases working to write the grants or partnering up with department folks to be able to do that. So money coming in like that, there are a fair amount of grants out there that really are looking at resiliency, especially, as you said, coastal communities, and what do we need to do to repair and care for some of the coastal spaces that we have. And then there's this other sort of sense, Lynch Park, I think, falls in this category, although certainly it's needed repair as well. But what do you do, forward-looking, what can we do to increase resiliency or to prepare ourselves for the changes that are happening on our coast? So some of that money, again, is coming in from external grant sources, but you're correct that some of it also needs to be city money that's going towards, once projects are decided, some of it will be city money that will invest. And, I think a question mark will be some of the time also, we've been fortunate to receive earmarks, either state or federal earmarks, working with our partners at the either federal level or our state partners, the government. And I think it's just a question mark as we look at things happening on the federal level and how that will trickle down to our state, how much money we'll be able to secure through earmarks, I think is a variable. But an ongoing priority is thinking about erosion generally, but Lynch Park is a huge question. I think you've raised it rightly. It's a park. It's certainly beautiful. It's a beautiful public space, and it's right on the coast. And some of it originally was created through filling land that had been, wetlands. And so, as our coast is changing, the ocean's sort of creeping back up to the place that it had been.
Wants to take it back.
Wants to take it back, and so it's sort of thinking about both preparing for increased resiliency. That can sometimes look like hardening protections. Seawalls are an example of that. And sometimes can look like living into the reality that if the ocean, when we have these big storms, if the ocean is going to encroach back on land that was formerly wetlands, are there changes that we need to make just about how we've conceived of the park to sort of allow for something that could be more safely flooded and then recede? The Rose Garden is an example of something that when it flooded recently, it did a tremendous amount of damage because, of course, the Rose Garden doesn't like to live under salt water.
No.
And so I think, we
don't
want to
have
think about
saltwater roses.
Saltwater roses. We want to think about how to protect some of the spaces, and then also it might be about redesigning others to allow for this reality that in some of these storms, water may come in, and so how can we make it more safely floodable? We don't want to have it damaging people's homes
we got
or
to provide
infrastructure.
some sort of drains back out again.
It does, if it can drain
Because
back out, yes.
basically, when a storm surge hits, it's one particular wave, or maybe a couple of them, and after that, the sea level goes back to where it used to be. So it's a temporary problem as far as the input is, and what was discouraging was the pictures that were showed a couple of years ago of water just sitting in Lynch Park.
Yes.
It didn't go.
Yes.
So we built a trap, and we're trying to make a saltwater lake. Not a good idea.
No, you're right, and that's what I mean when I say maybe some of it's about hardening or protecting, and some of it's about redesigning or imagining the ways that we could, create a way for the water to drain or recede back out more easily. Because you're right, what happened was it came in and it sat, and that was discouraging, I think, for many people when we saw that.
The grass we have also is not amicable to salt water, so it has its problems. But the point that you made a while ago, and I think we've had this discussion before, the city's got a director of gifts.
Gifts grant director, yes.
Grant director. And I think that from what I hear, she's doing a really good job.
Yes.
And I think this is one of the things that ought to be advertised more often of, how much grants did we get this year and what we were able to do? And it's one of these things, the bad news is easily broadcast all over. Good news is sort of lost in the shuffle. So I think that's one of the good news stories for the city that ought to be advertised more often. And at the same time, people would get ideas as to, oh, we can do that. Well, maybe we should. And come up with some more opportunities that would improve the city. So that's an area that I think that needs to be advertised more often.
I agree with you. You know, I've noticed that there are times where the city's social media accounts, there'll be announcements celebrating a grant that we received, and I think that's really positive. I agree with you. I think, by and large, it's not always clear for folks, and we may not be sharing the story very fully of how many grants come in and what a variety. You know, I just mentioned a few to you in one area, but, you know, grants come in that help fund parts of our police department, things that are, you know, important for training, or turnout gear for our firefighters. They don't fully fund these items, but they're really important ways of supporting
Every little bit helps,
our employees and the work that they do and the projects we're able to accomplish. So I agree with you. I think it's a good news story, and we should share it more broadly. And our grants director, she does do a great job, so we're lucky to have her.
And I guess what is the big scene this year is election season is going to be a twofold exercise.
That's true.
That Jerry Paracella has been appointed a judge, and he's no longer, I don't know whether he's still technically on the list, or whether he's actually moved into his judgeship.
I think he's fully into his judgeship now. Fully judging.
So he's fully judging.
Yeah.
So when he walks in, we can say, "Here comes the judge. Here comes the judge." Anyway, so he needs to be replaced, and there are, I think, the 3 people who are still competing for it, and 2 of them are city councilors, Todd Rotundo and Anna Bowen.
Yes.
So and that's happening. The election is going to be, the special election is the 15th of April. For the primary,
for the primary for
that one.
Yes.
And the final election is going to be 13th of March.
Oh, May, I think.
May. Yeah. And so that's going to be an active season between now and then. And I keep getting emails of, "Hey, I'm having a party, come see." And so they're very active on it. Then we start with the municipal elections.
Yes.
And already there's going to be a contestant for the mayor's slot, another city councilor, Todd Sweeney. Brendan Sweeney. I'll get it right yet.
Yeah.
So, plus all the city councilors are up, and all the school committee is up.
Yes.
So, I guess as you were mentioning before, there had been some talk about having the primary and the election for the state rep to be all in one place. I think we did that a couple of years ago when I forget what the election was, but it was in.
I think it was it was the land swap with the state to allow for the Brimble Ave rotaries, as I recall. We had to vote on whether to allow that.
It was all done in the high school gymnasium field house.
Yes.
So that was kicked around, and I guess they've decided
to go with regular polling locations.
Regular polling locations.
So thanks for raising that. So if folks are wondering where to go on April 15th for that primary vote for their state rep race, they go to their regular polling location in their ward where they would typically vote in a municipal, state, or federal election.
Yeah. So right now it looks like a choice of 3, and Medley Long is the 3rd candidate.
Yes.
And then, as I mentioned earlier, in the next month, May, they're going to vote for one of the 2 selected from the primary.
Yes.
So that's
It's a tight election season on a special election.
Yeah.
It'll be a quick turnaround process
Yeah.
from primary to final.
So it's going to be an exciting season. So what else is happening in the city that I forgot to ask about?
Well, you touched on the question of, when we talked about paving, you touched on the question of street trees, and I think that broadly that makes me think about our plantings broadly, and how we can better steward our plants to allow for care of pollinator habitats and native plants versus sort of invasive or external kind of species. So something exciting that I think you'll see is that there's folks who are already working in small ways on advocating around those projects. I expect that conversation will be bigger over the coming year, and I think it will be a positive for our community. We've sort of been working on it in little spots, and you can see different planters on Cabot Street, for example, that the city's moved to native, pollinator-friendly kind of plantings. I think broadly the conversation then extends to, how do we choose street trees that really provide shade and respite for folks and are good for the environment. So I think that conversation will be sort of coming out more broadly, and I'm excited to see where that goes.
Is this something the city is initiating, or is this something garden groups around town
I think
are initiating?
right now it's largely been a little bit of both. The city has initiated sort of those little spots of native plantings, like the planters along Cabot Street. But also we've got some great community partners, for example, the Green Beverly group, which is not city-run, but a great group of advocates. And so one of the things that they really help educate about and created a demonstration kind of pollinator garden at Dane Street Beach, but it was their creation, is pollinator habitat care of, which is, butterflies, bees, and birds, and some other bugs as well. But being able to really think about more broadly how the city might embrace that project a little more holistically. Yeah. So I think it's actually a combination. I think you'll see local folks who are really invested in this, and hopefully it bridges over into a sort of more cohesive city conversation.
Well, as part of the tax revenue, there is an add-on for community projects.
Yes.
And is that how this is getting funded or getting initiated? Or is that still a separate group that's doing?
Really separate. I think that's a great question. You're talking about the money that comes together and then becomes part of the CPC grant cycles. It's not been part of that. I think whether a group might decide to put together a proposal is a different question. But no, largely it's sort of been outside groups or advocacy, or as the city has done work like repaving Cabot Street, making a decision on those small spaces to move towards native plantings instead of some of the more ornamental plantings perhaps we're used to seeing, but I think we'll see more and more of those native plants coming.
Good.
We'll get more used to them.
Well, thank you very much for
Thank you very much.
helping us understand what's going on, and hopefully you'll come back and give us another update as we get closer to decision time.
I would love to be back. Thanks, George.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us this evening. And again, as I say, my email address is at the front and the back end of the show. And if you got a question, please send me it via email, or if you got a longer statement, there's always room for you here at the table. And thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.